the pain waits. And as soon as I poured alcohol on my pain, it would explode. Right. And so that's when all my stuff came out. And that's why I could never predict my behavior once I started drinking. I didn't realize that I had so much unprocessed pain. I was dissociating from a very young age, right? Like, all about that. And when we dissociate, it's not as if those experiences go away. It's sort of like locked away in a barrel of toxic waste that leaches out into everything else. And, pour alcohol on that. There was a couple of things that would happen to me. As soon as I would drink alcohol, this feeling of more would kick in, right? Like I had no off switch. So I was definitely a blackout drinker. Like party till you puke kind of was like my motto. I made a joke out of everything, right? If I said if I didn't have splash marks on my shoes the next day, it wasn't a good time. Like I was just this wild party girl, right? But it was a response to all the pain that was unprocessed deep inside. I had no coping skills.
One of the things that, I think about a lot because I grew up in the Mormon Church. And that in its own right was incredibly traumatic, especially being biracial growing up in the Mormon Church.
Yeah.
Well, whole story we're not going to get into right now. But I'm really curious. Do you think that the religious pressures, the pressures of your father being very spiritual and religious, did that play a role? Because I see this another just connecting dots, because part of this I want to help people understand their own dots, right?
Yeah.
And I always see that, generally speaking, I won't say always, generally speaking, I see this connected dots between the religious pressures to be good and addiction. And I'm just wondering if you think that was a factor, not necessarily to throw religion under the bus, but just seeing if there's a correlation there.
Yeah, listen, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. And I'm not afraid to throw religion under the bus because, I was, the sad thing is, it's like the teaching of Jesus was all about forgiveness, right? Such a compassionate, beautiful idea of forgiveness and redemption, right? It's like we're human. We're not going to be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. I did not get that message. I got the message that if I wasn't perfect, that I would be condemned, right? And I was presented with these ideals, like the ideals of Jesus, this perfectionism. Ideals are funny. It's a mental construct. It's like the horizon. You can always walk towards the horizon, but you'll never arrive. And that's kind of like what these ideals were that I was absorbing. But nobody explained to me what was missing was the context and perspective that, yes, it's okay to be human. Like that's how I was made. But in this religious in the parlance of religion, there's a lot of perfectionism that's expected. And so I was trying to live up to these ideals, and it was this constant failure over and over and over. And I just gave up. I was like, fuck this. If I can't be perfect, then what am I doing here? And I abandoned this idea, the sky daddy, the religious God. I absolutely abandoned that. But I kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater because I have since learned that spirituality is different, right? It can be separate. Like they're not mutually exclusive, but spirituality was something that, that was such a gift to hear that you could divorce religion from spirituality. I didn't know that was a thing until I got sober.
So you're having conversation, and thank you, because I just wanted to paint like a deeper picture for people of your experience, because it's not something I want to gloss over, right? I've coached thousands of people, and the people who have this deeply religious trauma, which I'm one of those people, we tend to want to escape it, right? And maybe, through whatever avenue that might be, do the opposite. And this is something I think about a lot. You try to force this stuff down people's throats, they will push back. And they may not push back in terms of I'm leaving the church. They'll push back into drugs and alcohol and promiscuity and things that actually really hurt them because they don't feel good enough in the place in which they're supposed to be the most safe in the world.
Yeah.
And that's such a crazy idea to reconcile when you think about this is supposed to be the place where it's safe. And so thank you for sharing that.
Words. Yeah. If we don't name them, if we don't give them words, those emotions master us.
Yeah, entirely. And for context and clarity, same, but different, right? What you're
Yeah,
saying, what I'm saying, same thing, different terminologies, different
exactly. Yeah.
phraseology. But ultimately that came from a place where one day, and this was in my personal journey, I realized like my emotions were running amok. Like I was because I went from this person of zero emotional capacity, other than violence, which I thought was an emotion, which obviously I've come to find is not, right? And I mean, physical violence, emotional violence, mental violence, like it was very, very dark for a long time. In fact, I'd learned to shut off, right? Because for 15 years, I didn't cry. I didn't cry when my 3 childhood best friends got murdered. I didn't cry when my grandmother died. I didn't cry when my mother died. I didn't cry when there were breakups. I didn't cry ever because I was so shut off. Then I opened the release valve through the coaching, the therapy, the personal work, the journaling, the meditation, the yoga, all of the things. And then suddenly my emotions were like this fire hose that were just spraying everything and everyone at all times. And so it's interesting because there was this pendulum swing. And I think to get to normality and baseline, the reason I use the word control is because it's about being mindful of it, right?
Yeah.
When I learned about the 90-second rule, like that changed my life forever because I was like, oh, I don't have to be this emotion all the time. And I can sit in baseline recognizing that there's this dissipation over time. I want to go a little bit deeper into something here because we were talking about what it's like in childhood, because I really want to sit in this space just a moment longer. It was a question that I had. I found that causation and correlation for me as an analytical person, probably more so than I care to be at times, has led to this place where if I can have a foundational understanding and a framework of looking at why something actually takes place in my life, then that gives me the power to actually move through it and create a game plan to be able to overcome it or to heal it or to grow it or whatever the thing is, right?
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I'm going to say what I say is because I know that I'm not the only person who has experienced this. Obviously, we're a podcast about childhood trauma. Growing up, one of the turns of phrase that I heard more than anything that I believe is actually the cornerstone to me shutting off emotionally that I think a lot of people go through is, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. Mm-hmm. I see kind of the reaction on your face here. If you're listening, you're not noticing. What comes up for you in that and this pathway to anger?
Yeah, I am having a reaction to that. I know many people have heard that. That just, I'm feeling just disgusted. Maybe I'll start with what that parent or what that caregiver is saying in that moment. What they're saying is, what they're not saying, but what they're saying is, your vulnerability is too evocative for me to tolerate because I am so shut off to all my vulnerable emotions. I cannot handle yours, A. B, the fact that you're crying, I see exclusively as a reflection of me failing you in some way, and I refuse to acknowledge that. And so you better smile and look happy so I can feel better about me. So that's a narcissistic component there. So those are really the two things that they're saying in that moment. And what they're not doing is what they need to be doing is saying, wow, you're you. You're not me. This is not a reflection of me failing you. This is a reflection of you being hurt. And when someone's hurt, they need a hug. They need to be understood. They need someone to be a mirror to them and reflect back to them what they're seeing and saying, wow, little Michael, like you look really sad. Tell me what's going on. Would you like me to hug you? Would you like to talk about it? I want to hear.
Why is vulnerability, especially in that context, so terrifying to people?
Shame. Because so let me talk about shame. So shame is not an emotion. So here's why. Shame is a feeling, for sure, not an emotion. The word emotion, emotion, it stands for like something that is there to give us movement, to elicit movement, right? So
if you're not going to love yourself, who else will? Like you teach people how to love you by the way you love yourself. You're like, oh, They don't love me. They don't treat me well. How well do you treat yourself? How much do you love yourself? What you give to yourself teaches others how they should treat you. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, there are extremes like abusive people, blah blah blah. But in general, if you want to get love yourself more, give more love.
Yeah. And it's going to suck at the beginning. Like it really does. If you're full of criticism and self-hatred and self-loathing and suicidal ideations, which I've had all of those. That the first time my life actually changed was when I stared in the mirror and I made myself look at myself. I'd never looked at myself before. There was so much shame and so much guilt. It's not, hey, how's my hair? How's my beard? How's my clothes? It's like I looked into the depth of who I was and it stopped. And so when I wrote Think Unbroken and we released that book now almost 6 years ago, which is so crazy, one of the chapters is talking about doing this mirror work because it's so profoundly important. And I don't think it's talked about enough because it creates this thing where your life gets to change because now you can start commanding yourself to love yourself. You are giving yourself orders and stepping into that brainwashing capacity that I think is unbelievably necessary. Well, I want to just stay in that for a moment. What was the biggest aha for you in the mirror work? What shift happened for you that the discomfort dissipated?
The day that I was able to look at myself and say, I love you and not cry. That was amazing. I felt that it was a breakthrough. And just spending time with myself and sending that good vibes to that girl in the mirror and loving her no matter what, no matter how broken, devastated, unwanted, trash like she feels, still loving her. Like I was proud of myself in that moment. And we spoke about conversations, sometimes our subconscious mind, that lizard brain I was talking about, that part, that wants to be right and do whatever you tell it. Sometimes when we say, even joking, like, oh, I'm so stupid. Or, when we're joking, when we are, how do you call it? Self-deprivate. What's the word?
Deprecating.
Yes, that word. Humor, that type of humor where you put yourself down, catch those moments and eliminate those moments. I'm so amazingly smart. You can joke like that. Why not joke and say really good things about yourself? Because the brain the subconscious does not understand that you're joking. Takes it in. So always talk to yourself about yourself in very highly. When you talk about yourself to other people, say good things about yourself. And when you talk to yourself in private, also, please say really nice things about yourself. You only have one life to live. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So love yourself today. Don't wait until somebody else is going to love me and then I'm going to feel really loved. It doesn't work that way. When you're whole, the love that you want will come to you. When you're of course, when we have a partner and that's beautiful, supportive partner, it increases the love. But you got to do the work for yourself and not wait for the day that something's going to happen and then you're going to love yourself. And then you're going to feel happy. I'm going to get that beautiful big house and then I'm going to feel happy. No, you got to experience those emotions now. Go into gratitude and appreciation of what you have and train your brain to be in gratitude and appreciation of what you have, because our brain is pretty primitive. We're still looking for the saber-toothed tiger and what's bad. We are trained in our DNA to look for danger and to look for what's bad. So if you do practice like mirror work, if you do practice like gratitude, you change it and you start looking for what's good. It's a process, but it's amazing what gratitude can do. Even just one list of gratitude. And you're like, my life sucks. I have nothing to be grateful for. You're breathing, right? Somebody just died now in this second. You can walk, great. A lot of people cannot walk. You can talk, great. You can write, you can think. Thank God you can think. There are so many things we can be grateful for.
I'm going to
Yeah, I
go
mean,
and I'm going to continue to do the things that reinforce to me that I am worthy of love. I am worthy of the life that I'm trying to build. And the energy for me, man, has become so different because, we often try to heal the voice of trauma with another voice of trauma. We try to heal the voice of an inner critic with another voice of the inner critic. And so we beat the hell out of ourselves for having the echoes, and we shame ourselves for them. Well, I'm still broken. I still have these. If you start to accept that this stuff is totally normal, it should be a part of the journey and the story. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you that you have that. I always felt like I was the one person. I'd hear other people's stories and be like, yeah, they can do that, but I can't do that. And that story drove my life until I finally realized, oh my God, it's a story. And it's something that's trying to serve me. And I created a gap between me and the voice and started to observe it, and it disempowered it and allowed curiosity to do exactly what you're saying. So, yeah.
when I initially created Think Unbroken now almost a decade ago,
Wow.
the tagline around it and what I was trying to do at the time was, we are the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Because I looked at that and I found that to be the most accurate truism of my life.
Yeah.
Like the words that I would like extrude out of myself and put into the world would always somehow come back to me, because I keep looking at the world and I'm like, this is a mirror. Like this is not this outside perspective. Like what I see with my eyes is a mirror. It is not a window. And that felt so much true, because when I started to understand the functions of the brain, for example, the reticular activating system, this idea that we see what we seek, right? In the Bible, you seek and you will find. You want to find a shitty relationship, you're going to find a shitty relationship.
Right.
You want to find health, you're going to find health. And then I like kind of parlayed that with an unnecessarily probably deep dive into Gestalt, not only from my own experience therapeutic healing journey, but also just reading literally every piece of literature and watching everything I could ever find on Gestalt, because I found that I was so dissociated. I really needed to get into the present, and the Gestalt really helps you sit in the here and now, comes around personal responsibility, brings in awareness, and it really helps you move away from this idea of intellectualizing and really brings you into the moment. And so like I was thinking to myself, as I'm like trying to navigate this and then doing work with IFS and doing work in EMDR and CBT and NLP and ABC and every acronym you could ever imagine, it always came down to the same thing. No matter what I was in, no matter what I was doing, this idea about this self-narrative and this storytelling element always became the thing that I could leverage against to create change. If you believe, was it Mark Twain? Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, that's the part about shame. If you find the belief system shift that you can let go of it and that you can be a fully formed, authentic, unjudged now, by the way, unjudged internally, because trust me, society is judging the shit out of you. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
But if you can become that version of you, like that's where freedom lies.
Yeah.
And the thing that came up for me, I just started asking myself all of these questions, all of these things, and I would just dive and dive and dive and dive and dive. And then I realized like it always comes down to like one or two things, just like you had mentioned earlier, just always one or two things.
Yeah.
I preface all that to ask this question. What is one thing that you wish that everyone understood about shame?
That you're not the shame. Shame will trick you to think that you are the shame. It is not who you are. And that is one of the hardest things in healing from shame, is to put it outside of us. And it is the most devious, tricky part about shame. Once again, guilt says, did something wrong. Shame says, I am something wrong. I would love for people to understand that that feeling that they carry, that you're uniquely broken, that there's something wrong with you, is shame. And that shame is not you. It is something you learned. It is a habit. And it is something you can unlearn.